give me one moment. I need to do a couple of things. I'm out of town.
I cannot hear you.
Oh, no, just a moment, please. I'm out of town.
You out of town?
Yeah. Give me one moment.
Okay.
Please.
God be with you. God bless you as you continue to travel and you do safe travel back home, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. I need all of that. Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
You're coming back today?
No. No. Girl, I have been going to funerals. And it's just been a lot lately.
No.
Yeah, lots.
Wednesday or Thursday you were there?
Well, I had to go to another one, and then I've got another one to go to before I come home. So, a lot of friends are getting out of here. Thank you. But you know, this is the way you've been blessed by people.
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I've never heard anyone who went to the light who was trying to come back. How about that? Okay, so I'm like, it's all right. As Uncle Saint said to me, I'm not going anywhere you're not heading. Oh, Uncle Saint, I just love him. Okay, so just give me one moment. I need to find a little something.
Go ahead. Get yourself together, and I'll be on it. Then I'm going to jump off and get on the prayer line. Okay.
Okay, no worries. Okay, just give me a moment. Devin, I need to make a quick phone call. Okay. Okay.
Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
Oh, Paula, I'm doing the best I can, girl. You got to do what you got to do when you've got to do it. I just pray that the good Lord continues to give me strength. That's all. There's nothing too hard for God. So that is what I'm handling. And that's that. Hey, how y'all doing this morning? Jewel, I want to see you. Hey, do you mind if we start with Trump and then pivot to the schools? Yeah, I want to do that. I'm gonna. Shanina's not going to be on at 6:15, but I'll stretch that out. But if you can come on, 'cause I won't ask you to come on any earlier. If you could come on then and talk about, yeah, and talk and just if we could do that, okay, just talk about because I'm in New York and that's like the story. Okay, I get. Okay, now do you want to call in? Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Hey, sorry. Let's move Dwight McKee up to 6:15 to right after Mrs. Walton. I know you're like, what is this woman doing this morning? Well, and they have been happening. So thank you for 6:30. But what I did do was give him the call-in numbers because oftentimes when we call, he's not hearing it's not registering on his phone. So if he doesn't hear from us, he will call on either of the lines, or he might even call in the call-in line. Okay. Thank you. Blessings. Well, I'll stay right here. Okay, I'm up on Facebook.
Okay, I will check that 1 second.
Thank you so much.
Illinois and the city of Chicago have to do what's best for the taxpayers, and the Chicago Bears need to do what's best for the Chicago Bears. The hope is that they can find something down the middle that is beneficial to not only the Bears organization. Okay, Pam, can you talk to me, please? Just the fans that are filling up those stadiums and buying all that merchandise.
Okay, it's hard to hear over this, okay?
Sunday nights at 9 on WCBT. Spring begins. I'm Dr. Anthony Lyon.
Can you hear her?
Okay, turn the station off.
Yeah, okay.
I can hear you.
Okay.
4 years ago, Julie Roth of Ann Arbor, Michigan, installed solar panels on her home and got excited to help others in her
Okay, Pam, can you talk for us again?
city's Office of Sustainability. She organized a get-together where her neighbors and good morning. Spring begins today.
Okay, I can hear you. You're a little quiet, but I'll let you turn the station off on your end entirely. Should be better.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, we need to make sure that you can be heard on Facebook.
Yeah, I was able to hear her on Facebook.
You could? Great. Okay.
Yeah, she was a little bit quiet. Now the station's off. That should fix that problem.
Thank you, Paula. I'm just talking to everybody. Shalom and good morning to you, Robert and Joyce. I'm so glad that you all are joining us this morning. I'm up in New York at the Wall Street Project Conference. Bright and early. Been doing a lot of moving over the past week, but Lord keeps giving me strength, so there we go. So, all right, everybody.
All right, 60 seconds, everybody.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's have a great show. All right, everybody. Here we go.
10 seconds.
Thank you, Devin. Let's have a great show. Thank you for all that you do, Devin.
Change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world. This is the Santita Jackson Show. Change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you today on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I'm Santita Jackson. Let's talk about the will they or won't they? Will they or won't they arrest former President Trump? And what will be the political fallout? Will there be protests? They say protest in New York. That's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You've got more than 35,000 police officers here in New York City, and it's probably the best equipped of LA, New York, but they have almost a militaristic approach to policing. So they could handle it if things get out of hand, but will he be indicted? Will he be arrested? What will happen? So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. And did you know that 100% of the public schools in New Orleans are charter schools? Yeah, they don't have a public school system in New Orleans. Many were afraid after Katrina that Katrina, and the most devastating aspects, it can be argued, could have been prevented. And we're going to talk about that. And many Black people felt that there had been a movement to gentrify New Orleans and to remove Black people from New Orleans, and it was largely successful. It's the largest mass removal of people in the history of our country. And so part of that is, the really the elimination of the public school system. So we got to talk about that because that happened on, yes, Paul Vallis's watch. And what does that portend for Chicago? As Chicago increasingly becomes a city for the affluent, as cities become citadels for those who are affluent. The less money you make, the less likely you are to be able to afford to live in the city, any city in the United States and around the world. What does that mean to everybody? So let's talk about that today. What about what do you think about the charter schools? Could that happen in Chicago? Of course it could. Of course it could. And it could happen under many different guises. So let's talk about the charter school movement and the privatization of public schools, which really hurts black and brown and eventually poor white children. Call us at 773 WCPT, 773 9278. Let's get to some of these headlines. In Chicago, it will be 49 degrees. That will be the high today. Mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 36 degrees. Partly cloudy. In the NBA, the Timberwolves will be playing the Knicks, and the Bulls will be facing off against the 76ers tonight. In the NHL, well, the Wild were triumphant over the Capitals, 5-3, and Chicago will be facing off against the Avalanche. Call me at 773-763-9278 as UBS had to buy Credit Suisse, one of the biggest banks in the world. Indeed, the European banking system differs from the United States system because they don't really have community banks. They have a handful of banks that control the European economy. So now for $3.2 billion in order to stabilize Credit Suisse, which uh, a lot of their scandals have been covered up. We're going to talk about that perhaps tomorrow or the next day with Dr. Max Wolf. They've been involved in all manner of nefarious activities. Well, now they have been bought out. So we will see what that portends for the American banking system. And the Manhattan DA, well, President Trump's intimidation efforts, he says, will not be tolerated. What do you think about that, everybody? What do you think is going to happen? What will it look like to have a former president of the United States take a mugshot, get fingerprinted, appear before a judge? Indeed, he is a leading candidate for the Republican Party nomination for the presidency. Will this march him back toward the presidency or not? Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. In the meantime, Senator Elizabeth Warren is demanding a probe into the bank failures, SVP, Signature Bank, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are 186 more banks in the United States, at least, that are at risk. And she is urging President Biden to fire Jerome Powell, who she didn't want there in the first place. She said, we're going to have the same kind of problems that we had in 2008. And here we are once again, everybody. Minnesota has become the fourth state in the United States to provide free school meals to all children. Good for you, AM 950 radio, and all of my brothers and sisters in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Call me at 773-763-9278. And people are calling for the French president, Emmanuel Macron, to resign. The retirement age has been raised by 2 years, and the French are furious. And you have watched the corporate media now because they're saying that, oh my goodness, they have such a generous package and they cannot afford it. And yet we have more billionaires than ever before. Something is off here. The poor, I guess, are supposed to continue to work forever and ever and ever. Amen. And the wealthy just are supposed to get wealthier. Well, those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. I want you to meet my morning stars. That's right, Dave Dowling and Robert Williams and Andre Parker and Paula Garcini Zipser. She was one of the originals. Jewel, who's up here in New York. I can't wait to see you. Renee, Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. We're going to be including you in the conversation too because Paul Vallis was there. And we're going to have one of your city council women, Kendra Brooks, on in the next few days to talk about her opposition to Paul Vallis because she said, he privatized our school system and our children were hurt. Joyce Anderson, hey, how you doing? Robert, I said hello to you, and I'm just going through the line, everybody. Thank you, Paul. You love the earrings? Then you'll love this too, right? I love my jewelry, everybody. Mildred Banks, how you doing? Max Myrick, how you doing, sweetie? Laura, hey, 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 call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. Let us talk about the what could be the imminent arrest of President Trump. That's first on the menu. And did you know that 100% of the public schools in New Orleans are charter schools? But in the meantime, let's get some good news. We need the good news from Pam Morris Walton. Indeed, she is our gospel sister. She is an icon in the world of communications. And every time I talk to her, she is in a church, and I love it, love it, love it. I love always hearing from my gospel sister. And 57 days, wait for a new heart. Bless your heart. You just keep on going. You just keep on going. I just love my Pam Morris. What's the good news? What's the good word this morning?
Good morning, Santita, and thank you so very much for that. The good news today, this morning, is protect your peace, not someone else's. I'm talking directly to you, each one of you. Put your name on this. We should get up every morning believing for a good day, expecting favor, knowing that God is directing our steps. At the same time, we should realize that everything may not go perfectly for us today. Every person may not treat us right. Our plan may not stay on schedule. There may be some bumps in the road. How about that in Chicago? Things that we don't see coming. If you're not going to enjoy the day, if your plans don't work out right, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Let me say it one more time. If you're only going to enjoy the day if your plans work out, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Hear this. In our cars, we carry a spare tire. When I drive somewhere, I'm not expecting to have a flat. I'm not expecting to hit a pothole that punctures the tire. I'm expecting to get to my destination as planned. But even though I'm expecting things to go my way, I've made provision in case they don't. I've taken steps ahead of time in case one of my tires go flat, because I'm protecting my peace. At the start of the day, you need to make a decision that no matter what comes against you, you're not going to get upset. No matter what someone says to you, this is the good news. You're not going to be offended. No matter what delays you expect or happen that you don't expect, what disappointment may happen, or maybe bad breaks that come your way, you're not going to sour. You already made up your mind to stay in peace. Something unexpected happens. One more time. If something unexpected happens, you could be upset or worried, but you have your spare tire ahead of time to stay in peace. Today, I'm asking each one of you to protect your peace. No matter what happens, decided ahead of time, you will stay in peace. Thank you, Santita. Have a blessed day.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that, and I needed that today. Because, things happen. Things happen. But, the law of physics, nothing happens unless you're acted upon by an outside force. But if your center is all right, you won't fall off the table. If you fall off the table, you roll over and you'll eventually get back up. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. Don't let my great grandmama, I guess she put it so well, Miss Pam. She said, as long as what happens to you doesn't happen in you, you're going to be all right, baby.
Yeah, like protect your peace.
That's
You've
right.
already decided ahead of time to stay in peace, no matter what happens.
Amen for that.
Things happen, Santita. But stay in peace.
And it happens all the time. Oh my gosh. It happens every day.
Take care, sweetie.
Love you so much. Pam Morris, everybody. 57 days. Wait for a new heart. You got to get that book. You must get it. You must get it. I am going to make the time as we get through this insane political season to talk about that, because we do need to talk about what it is to be a donor and what people go through when they get a transplant. Some people say that the emotions also shift, that you develop appetites that you didn't have before, and then you find out if you talk to the families that, no, my brother whose heart you have, they loved ice cream, they loved that ice cream. Wow. It's just, there's a lot to it. Cannot wait to hear from her. I love you, Pam Morris Walton. Love you, love you, love you. We've got Dwight McKay. I had to call him up a little early today because I said, I'm in New York City. Everyone is talking about former President Trump and whether he will be indicted, whether he will be arrested. Indeed, he sent out the message, hey, y'all, I'm going to be arrested. I need you all to protest. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763. Hey, Kenya Ross. Hey, Dave Dowling. That's right. Most great grandparents. And I was blessed to have mine with me until I was a grown woman. You're blessed because you get so much ancient wisdom from them. But I just wanted to know, you and Robert Patillo said that he would hold on to this office, that Mar-a-Lago, and you said this before the election in 2020, you said Mar-a-Lago would become another White House. He would hold on to his power and he might even increase it. And I want to hear from you, Dwight McKay. What do you make of what could be the president's imminent arrest?
Well, good morning, Stan. Well, I think it's very unwise because the return is not worth investment. It's the most they can charge him with is probably aggressive misdemeanor. And so why would you change momentum? Why would you, as in the Dr. Frankenstein story, why would you turn a monster into a martyr? It's that all this will give him is an opportunity to raise the money, to play the martyr, and to ignite his base. And it's going to give the Republicans a pretext to go after the Biden family, to go after Dr. Fauci, and to go after Black Lives Matter. And so I myself don't think it's wise, because he revels in that kind of attention and exploits it better than anybody in popular life. And so it really gives him a new platform that he really didn't have at a time when in some ways he had more limited options. He was kind of running out of options. And he was losing a lot of his luster with the Republican Party. But now he's going to go from being prosecuted to being persecuted. And most people really won't be able to tell the difference in that mega crowd. And he's going to become their new hero. I think it's a very unwise thing to do. That's my personal opinion.
But don't they know that if you want to make someone irrelevant, if you want to extinguish them from public life, you do what you don't mention them. You don't feature them on the news. They become a nostalgic footnote to people. I wonder what they're doing now. Yeah, where is so and so? We used to see them all the time. But they didn't do that ever since he lost. Every single day, he's been at the center of some major news story. And the corporate media and his so-called political foes have kept him in the headlines. Mayor Daley taught us you never utter the name of your enemy. What are they doing?
They often say that the opposite of hate, or the opposite of love, is indifference. Not hate, is indifference. Is that if you stop calling a name and leave them alone, then at some point they lose their luster. So you wonder if how much of this is his ability to manipulate the media, or the media's hunger for ratings, and so they have a need to elevate him and to talk about him and to pursue him. And though it may work for their ratings, at some levels it's going to work against the best interest of the country and the detriment of the United States, because it's going to put him right back in the running, in my opinion. And he's going to be almost impossible to convict. Because he may not get past the grand jury. Because all it takes is one person to hang the jury, and it will not be hard to find one mega person out of 12. It's almost impossible for him to convict him. I don't understand the logic myself.
I don't get it. I really don't get it. Jim, very quickly, I got about a minute and a half. You got the comment.
Good morning. I got to say that the person really doesn't have a chance to win the president of the United States, and we're probably better off if we can rehabilitate him and keep him up for 3 more years. What's interesting to me is Pence is on the morning talk show. They don't answer Pence the direct question of when did he start to conspire for this insurrection? When did he conspire to throw the election over and become the king of the United States? When did that happen? They don't ask him that because they're only interested in his publicity on the position with no intellectual capacity. And they love it because it drives their goal at the bottom line. That's the problem with this guy. If they read more books about this imbecile than anybody else on the planet, and there's nothing in them. It's like opening a book with no print on the pages. But it's only money. And he has no chance of winning anyway, so I hope they keep the nuts alive. Anyway, good morning. Thank you.
Blessings to you. So what do you think, everybody? 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. Want to hear from you today, and let's talk about charter schools. Let's talk about gentrification. But it's just almost inconceivable to me that 100% of the public schools in New Orleans are now charter schools. How does that happen? Indeed, Arnie Duncan, the former Secretary of Education, the former head of the public schools here, said that Katrina was the perfect opportunity to completely revamp the school system. Really? Is that what this is about? Privatization? And former President Trump? I want to hear from you today on the Santita Jackson Show. 773-763-9278. Back in just a moment. Whew, Dwight McKee. We're on Facebook.
I think you do yourself a disservice when you think that Trump can't win. Again, you have to understand the geopolitics of electoral politics.
What do you mean?
And he's still very strong in some of the states that are less populated, but who bring electoral votes to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And Republicans really hadn't finished with the Bidens yet. They just kind of beginning to make that move, and which is going to put a lot of people, by the time they deal with that, with his son and the rest of their family, is going to severely weaken him. And they don't have a Democratic option in the wing.
Mm-hmm.
That if he becomes a little weakened or even sick, because he's 82, 83, 84 years old, is that, one whole about with the flu. sending Chip Pearl and Dr. Reeves through? And so, with geopolitics play a significant role in an election, I really would not discount Trump because he can lose the popular vote, and still win the presidency.
And in fact,
he did last time.
That's what Republicans do. They don't count on winning the popular vote. That's why Nikki Haley's announcement was so significant, the way she framed it. She said, look, we're not winning the popular vote. And she knows eventually Americans are going to get tired of that, but they're not tired of it yet because we've not moved on it. The Electoral College still determines who your president's going to be. Wow. I mean, and you have a lot going on, and I'm wondering with this, while we're discussing former President Trump, you got Credit Suisse that was purchased by UBS. That's huge, Dwight. I mean, what happened with Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank clearly was not a one-off. It seems that the global, at least the Western banking system, the European and American-driven banking system is in real crisis, Dwight.
Yeah, not just that, though, Santita. France is practically closed down.
Yeah.
Because they want to refine the retirement age. And in Europe, they take those vacations and those retirements very seriously.
Absolutely.
And so now they're riding in the streets and they're demanding the president with 60 seconds. And that's going to affect the European banking economic system because France is a major player in European commerce.
Absolutely.
And so, and today, Putin is meeting with the president of China.
Mm-hmm.
And who's going to supply him with more arms to be able to go after the Ukraine.
And America can't talk junk to the Chinese. They've got the biggest economy in the world, according to McKinsey. They went from $7 trillion in 2000 to $120 trillion in 2022. That's astonishing. And if you notice, China, Africa,
Oh,
yeah.
So they call in the bond, the economy's going to collapse.
Absolutely, because they're our biggest creditor. They're our biggest, I mean, something like, what are y'all talking about?
Save the world, save the world, save the world. We can save the world, we can save the world, save the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
And hate the paper, the tattoo. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's save the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. What do you think about President Trump being arrested? What will be the political fallout? What will be the impact? It might happen tomorrow. At least that's what he claims. So what do you think about that? And then the Manhattan DA said, we will not be intimidated. So they just might think, I double dog dare you. But what will be the real the real political fallout of this? Will it drive President Trump closer to the presidency once again? I mean, tell me. And then we're going to be talking about these charter schools. But first, Chaparral, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Santita. And yes, the celebrations by us, we are gearing up for the prom season. So give us a call at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We can handle all of your balloon arches, your custom designs, your suite tables, as well as your backdrops and banners. So call us at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you. Thank you so much, Santita.
Fantastic. And people still get food from you?
Absolutely. We're still taking catering orders. So call us, and our menu is now online at celebrationsbyus.org.
Okay, all right. It's wonderful, wonderful hearing your voice always. You know, last week, um, some educators from New Orleans and Philadelphia um, went on the road, and some public school advocates went on the road. G2 Brown will be with us at the top of the hour. Will be talking with us about that. But they went on the road because they said, um, Paul Vallis was in our city. He was in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and he was in Philadelphia. He was in New Orleans, and he did real damage to the political, to the system. Now, the thing is, you can't just put this on Paul Vallis. To be fair, you got Michelle Rhee, who was in Washington. There is a corporatization. Now, mind you, he is on the side of the corporatists. I'm not denying that. But if we make it about one person, I think we're going to miss a big point, Dwight. As we're joined by Dr. Marnie Reeves, teacher in the public schools here in New York City, but she's also at the City University of New York. So she gets our kids through public schools and gets them into and through college. And of course, she's with the American Federation of Teachers, and just she does so much work on the policy side for teachers. But before we get to you, Dr. Reeves, Dwight McKee, when you hear that 100% of the public schools in New Orleans are charter schools now, and that happened on Paul Vallis's watch. He was sent in to clean up the system, one of the so-called worst performing um, public school systems in the country. Okay, so he went in and cleaned it up. Indeed, Arnie Duncan said, post Katrina, we have an opportunity. This is the perfect opportunity to get things right in New Orleans. And that is what they meant, the corporatization of public education. You don't get the LeBron Jameses and the Magic Johnsons and the Michael Jordans coming out of charter schools. They come out of public schools. The great musicians come out of public schools. The great artists come out of public schools. The great thinkers come out of public schools. They do not come out of these charter schools. And I'm not saying that charter schools don't have some really bright kids, but most genius doesn't show up on a test exam. Just doesn't show up there. So what's going on here? And then when you watch the charter school movement, what happens at the same time is the gentrification of a city, which means poor people get pushed out. So Dwight McKee, what is first your reaction to finding out that 100% of the public schools in New Orleans are charter? I called around to several friends last night or yesterday, as soon as I got off the Keep Hope Alive show, and they said, you cannot be serious. I've never heard of anything so insane. How could that happen? Dwight McKee.
Well, I don't think it's accidental. I think my fear is that our kids are going to become the line item on the ballot sheet of Citadel. Is that if you really understand what privatization, where it can go, and you need a point of reference, look at privatization of the prison system. What it did was create a pretext to send more people to prison, and then the prisoners themselves leased the prisoners out to the corporations for little or nothing, and then sold stock on the New York Stock Exchange and turn the prisoners into commodities. And what I'm looking at in this situation is the same potential is that you commoditize our students, you privatize the institutions, you turn them into businesses, and the profit-making businesses, so you have to reduce the pay of the teachers. You bust the union of the teachers. You pull in these young white students who now not working so much for a salary is because their debt is being forgiven. And they're only working 3 years as a segue to create a real career for themselves. So their vested interest is not inherently the students. It is themselves trying to get into the marketplace. and you privatize institutions, create a business, and what's going to happen, in my opinion, is that you're going to begin to see each one of these schools develop a mentorship relationship with these corporations, where these kids go and work in these corporations under the guise of apprenticeships, but it becomes for the corporations free or minimum labor because they only will pay the students a stipend to do real work. And that explains what your alarm was the other week when you see these child labor laws begin to be changed. Because I think it's all one big ambush. If you privatize the schools, you turn them into a business, you then lease the kids to these corporations. The corporations pay the kids a little, pay the schools a lot. That becomes part of their bottom line. They then can take that to the marketplace and institutions like Citadel will take them public, which explains how come they've given balance all these millions of dollars. Because they're the ones, these public companies are the ones that can benefit from this because they have investments not just in the schools, but in these corporations, which now have reduced labor costs. And so their bottom line goes up. I think it is a real threat to take us back to where we were in the 1920s, to take us back to where we were when the Tale of Two Cities. And ultimately, I think that, it does not confuse me that the same guys who are pro-privatization are also anti-woke and don't want us to teach history because they don't want us to be clear on what the plan is and don't want us to revisit what they did to us 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago and see that that's on the horizon. And so not only do they want us working for free, they want us ignorant and disorienting.
That's the only way that can happen, right? An educated populace is hard to manage. It's easier to manage people who have been anesthetized, who are on drugs, who are watching mindless television, who are being just removed from the mainstream, who are not being taught to think, they're being taught to remember and to learn how to do a process. I think you're onto something, Dwight McKee. Dr. Marnie Reeves, Dr. Terrain Reeves, help us. Oh, well, Dwight, before we talk to Dr. Reeves.
I was going to say, we saw the same thing happen in the music industry, in the radio industry. Is they took the music people out, put business people in, and corporate people in, and eviscerated the culture. Because rather than have the Berry Gordy's and the Tom Bills and the Gamble and Huffs in charge of our music, you then had corporate people in charge and accountants in charge who had no commitment to the music. Their commitment was to the bottom line. And so now you have an eviscerated culture that used to be the heart of our community. Now it's operating value-free, and the only value is return on investment. It's a very frightening reality that I think we're looking at.
What is the end result of that?
Back to the days when you had children working in corporations for pennies on the dollar, being exploited under the guise that we prepared you for the workplace. and it undercuts the labor market, the real labor market, because now you have parents competing against their own children for jobs, and the only ones that win are the corporations whose bottom lines are increased, and the investment companies like the Citadels, who got a bigger return on their investment. Again, that explains why they even invested millions and billions of dollars in the Paul Dallas.
Dr. Terrain Reeves, talk to us about the impact of charter schools on education. I mean, you're an educator. What does a public school offer that a charter school does not offer? What's the difference? I mean, in terms of education.
So, good morning, Santita. Thank you for having me on your show this morning. So, one of the things I think we need to always look at is this idea of for-profit. When we have corporatocracy taking over a school system, the question is always, what is the end goal? We also have to look at the fact that while they're claiming to build these schools, they're building prisons in the same communities where these schools are. Their zero tolerance policies oftentimes lead many of our students who might have some issues at home, ultimately behavioral issues, they end up in those systems. Because when a charter school is saying to a kid, you're expelled, if you're in a place like New Orleans, what is the alternative for you? If the charter school is saying you have to get out of our school, then you're saying to that child, you now have to go and get a job. Very similar to what they did in 1907 when they wanted 15-year-olds under the Gary Plan to be working, right? So when we have a school system that does not give an alternative to a zero-tolerance school system, then you're ultimately saying these kids are going to end up in prison, right? Which is the end goal of systems that are put in place in this way, right? So we see someone like a Paul Dallas who comes and he goes to all these very poor neighborhoods, and yes, he is called in. There are people who say to him, come in, and they call him in only because he touts himself as a reformer of education, right? He steals ideas from true educators and then says, these are my ideas. You know, these are the ideas that I've created, and they work better than any other idea that you've ever seen. The difference between his ideas that he's stolen and the originators of the ideas is that he is getting funded in these charter school systems to ensure that these programs work up to a certain point. And what he has done over the years is when he goes in and he sees, you know, I'm getting this started, if there's ever pushback, he runs away. In Connecticut, they kicked him out, and they kicked him out simply because he was not an educator at heart. He had no credentials to be an educator. And it was a judge who said, you have to go. We see him going into Pennsylvania. He goes into Philly, the Philly school district, 30,000 students drop out. So then the question as a parent and as an educator would be, what happened to those 30,000 kids who dropped out of school because of the initiative and these zero-tolerance programs that were put in place in the charter schools that he brought into that city? Look even further to Haiti. Haiti is not an American city, it's not a part of America. It's a country of its own, with its own rich, vibrant history. Their education system is one based on class. Everyone who goes to school there, they have to pay, whether you're rich, whether you're poor. What he did when he went there, and his statement was very clear, he said, the opportunity here is so great I can taste it. And that was all while he was thinking about what his next state dinner was going to be. Because at the time he went there, everyone in Haiti had just experienced an earthquake. There were people who were without homes. Over 3,000 schools were demolished. We had over 300,000 children who were without schools. We had over 1 million people who were without homes. And he went in and he did something that, the world might have, to a certain extent, closed their eyes to, but the evidence is there. He decided he was going to rebuild what he claimed was the best school system ever to be built in Haiti. That school system caused many poor children to end up going to work for the elite and the upper class in order to pay to get that education that they deserved. Now, these young children who should have been in school being educated ended up becoming like slaves to many of the elite and the wealthy of the island. Okay? And for those kids who could attend, the classrooms that they designed and provided for the kids were filled with formaldehyde. So, when we hear about Mr. Vallis and he's touting himself as an education reformer, what is he really saying? Is he saying that he's bringing back in true poetic form the school-to-prison pipeline at its fullest? Because for every community that he has gone into and claimed to rebuild, he has left nothing but pain and hurt and additional prisons for those young children to go to once those charter schools have kicked them out. And education is not about going to prison. I don't have to learn in prison. But the idea of many in the corporate sector is that if I have free labor, which I can only get either through the school-to-prison pipelines or I can get through the 1907 Gary Plan, then guess what? My country is secure and my future is secure. What they're not looking at is that we are taking the very foundation of life from our children when we're denying them knowledge, and instead of giving them that knowledge that they deserve, we're forcing them into subjugation. That knowledge is supposed to prevent them from being subjugated. But Mr. Vallis doesn't see it that way, because all he can do is think about that steak dinner that he can afford after he gets paid billions of dollars for turning a public school system into a charter school system. And that is very unfair to every single child in this country. Very unfair.
Call us at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. 100% of the public schools in New Orleans are charter schools. Could that happen in Chicago? Dwight McKee, could it happen in Chicago?
Very, very easily happen in Chicago if he's the mayor. Because, he knows the levers of power. The tragedy is that a lot of our people are co-signing on this and putting our children on the order of bail for a contract for a nickel and a nail. And they really ought to be ashamed of themselves and run out of town. That they are willing to forsake the whole future of generations of kids, of young people, because they may get a dime out the deal. It's very, very, very sad. No other people tolerate this.
Absolutely.
No.
There's no equity. There's no. These people who are supporting Barrage are not thinking about fairness and equity for children, and they're not even thinking about the future of Chicago or the future of this country. Because when you can look at his track record, all you have to do is pull that up and look at his track record. Okay, not only did he deprive children of equal education, what he also did, and a lot of people have not spoken of this, is left a lot of those schools with deficits, those school systems with deficits so high that even if they wanted to transfer back to traditional high schools, they would not have the funding. In Philadelphia, the funding dropped from 56% for traditional public schools to 36% with Vallis there. And then he walked away and let those 30,000 kids who dropped out to figure it out for themselves. There's no equity and fairness in education. education in charter schools.
Why do you say that?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Well, I want you to think about this. If I'm a kid who lives, and I will use New York as an example. If I live in Queens, and then my school that I have to attend because I'm getting a voucher is all the way in Manhattan. What happens if my parents can't afford the train to pay for me on the train? Right? New York City public schools. One of the things that we do, we ensure that we provide safe passage to and from schools. Okay? Our students get the Metro cards for travel. Our special needs students, and that's another thing that charter schools don't provide. Another group of kids they don't provide for. Our special needs students have bus services that pick them up from home and bring them to school. Okay? So here it is. We have charter schools who get to pick and choose the kids who they want in their school building. So here, for example, in my school, we have over 600 kids who are special needs kids. Over 600. In a charter school, they would not take one. They would not. Their charter does not take special needs kids. If a student has an IEP, that student is not considered a special education kid. Okay, that student is treated like a general education kid. Now, that special education kid goes into a charter school, and let's say because they're not getting the services that they need and deserve, they start acting out. What happens in a charter school is they have the right to kick them out. So when they kick them out of the charter school, especially in a place like New Orleans, right, we know we have our students who have learning deficits, right? We have students who have other deficits. Special needs, special education programs allow for those children to get those services that they need and deserve. In a charter school, oftentimes they don't allow for or provide for those needs to be addressed in the right way. We might have the IDEA in place. It doesn't mean that as a charter school, I want it on record that I took in a population of special needs kids and could not meet their needs. Because historically what has happened with a lot of students who are special education or special needs, it might take them a little bit longer to get from point A to point B. They're not doing it as quickly as a general education student. That means that I have to hire additional teachers. I have to hire additional social workers. I have to hire additional guidance counselors. And if you go into many of these charter schools, they don't have a lot of those things in place. Because the charter schools test and test and test. They have to show and prove and guarantee their funding through those testing. Right? I can't do that if I got to provide for all these people.
Well, stay
it
right
takes
there.
away from my time. And I know this very well because we're fighting that fight here in New York with Success Academy.
Stay right there, everybody. Let's talk about these charter schools. Did you know that, Renee, did you know that 100% of the public schools in New Orleans are charter schools? And what happened in New Orleans? What happened as a result of Katrina? You had the greatest migration out of a region that we've seen in American history. 1.3 million people were removed and moved all over the place. And you blew a hole in Black political power, too. There's a lot that we've got to talk about today on the Santita Jackson Show. But what about, could 100% of the schools in Chicago go charter? If that happened, what would that mean? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. G2 Brown's going to join us in just a minute. Whew. You guys, this is a lot. I mean, whew. Everybody who, well, you know, Dr. Reeves, you were on Keep Hope Alive yesterday, and people were stunned when they heard that 100% of the New Orleans schools are charter.
Yes, it is 100%. 100% charter.
Okay, Silas says.
Charter, and 99% of their students attend the charter schools, and there's no alternative for them if they get kicked out. And by the way, they have a zero tolerance policy in place in their charter schools.
Well, yeah. And Shyla, why don't you call in? Because Shyla said, I have yet to listen to any criticism of Brandon Johnson. No one is perfect. What we're doing is comparing and contrasting, Shyla. What we're looking at are, I believe in public education. My family believes in public education. And, and contrary to popular belief, um, all of my parents' kids were mostly educated in the public school system. When my brother Yusuf went away to St. Albans, that was just for 4 years. He, in fact, had planned to go to Whitney Young and was torn about going to St. Albans or Whitney Young because I'd gone there and done so well, and Jonathan had too, Congressman Jackson. Um, my sister went through public schools mostly. So, the thing is, what we're doing is comparing and contrasting. I'm not looking for a perfect candidate, I'm looking for a present one. And I'm looking for someone who is going to do, who is inclined to do what I need them to do, and I will protest for the rest, including them. And I don't criticize people just for the sake of it. Then this is not personal. I like Paul Vallis a lot. And I think he really believes that he's doing the right thing. I just think that what he's doing is the wrong thing. What he's done is wrong thing. That's his record. All we're doing is talking about his record. And that should not be a threatening thing. It's revelatory. Dwight, Dr. Reeves.
Well, it's hard for me to believe that he does not understand what he's doing. I mean, that he thinks he's doing the right thing. I think that he is making political decisions and economic decisions that work in the interest of a few, like his commitment to crime issue, to hire 1,000 more police, and to use that as a base. If Trump was talking about having 1,000 police, people would be outraged. They would think that he's setting up a little army.
Oh, yeah.
But Alex is doing it almost with impunity.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
With impunity. People don't understand when you set up a corporate school, it's a business model, as my friend Hunter Adams said, it's a business model, which means that you look at the bottom line. So some goods and services that affect the bottom line can be cut, like gym, like music, like art. Those things that are not bottom line orientated, but contributors to the human spirit. When you got a business model, then you want to look at teachers' salary to make sure that they are maintained at a minimum. You want to look at the kind of money that you get per student, particularly when it's based on merit. Then you want to make sure that you have the very best, because if your records reflect a improvement in the student rates, then you can raise your tuition, because tuitions become arbitrary in these schools. And so now you got a small group of parents trying to get into very few quality schools, into the laws of supply and demand kicks in, and so the value of the school goes up. And when the value of the schools goes up, by definition, tuition goes up. But the teacher's salary may not reflect that situation, because that money may not go to salaries. That money may go to dividends, or go to administrative salaries, or the owners of that institution that's looking at the bottom line at a profit for their investors and shareholders. I mean, and again, then the next thing that they want to do is to lease these students out to corporations who's willing to pay, a fair amount of money to get these kids at bottom prices, because they come in as apprentices, but they don't have any benefits. They have no health insurance. They have no medical education beyond paying them a minimum salary. And so it really becomes a potential sweatshop situation. And now you can compete with the third world for labor costs.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, globally, if your corporation, now you really can come out of China and not have the situation you had a couple of years ago where you had distribution problems. Now you really can come out of it. I can fix it.
Okay, do we have Mr. Brown? Oh, hold on one second.
No, both times went straight to voicemail. Try calling again. One pre start with the headlines.
Okay, thank you. Well, Dwight, I want you to break that down for us on the air because I really think that's where we're heading. And like you said, there's no accident. Dr. Reeves, can you stay with us or do you need to go? Because I know you're heading to the Wall Street conference.
I don't have to leave yet.
Okay.
But I'm here listening to Dwight. I agree with everything that Dwight is saying at this point. I think first we start with the dumbing down of education, and then we start with the privatization of education.
Well, hold on one second because we're coming up.
10 seconds.
Okay. Thanks, y'all. Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you today on the Santita Jackson Show. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Many people have made this Chicago mayoral election about, they've said, that it's really about crime. But it seems that increasingly it's about education. You have had public education advocates who have flown in from all over the country who are now out campaigning for Commissioner Brandon Johnson. Why is that? They're saying that, look, Paul Vallis was in New Orleans. Paul Vallis was in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Paul Vallis was in Chicago, but really in New Orleans, boy, on his watch, all of the public schools, all of them, 100% of the public schools went charter. Now, there was one article, to be fair, that said, no, only 83 out of 86. Whew. You guys, please don't do that to me. It's too many things. I mean, they have a charter. They don't have a public school system in New Orleans anymore. It's now charter schools. And I repeat, you do not get the top athletes that come out of charter schools. You don't have the top musicians. You don't have the people who've got the artistic and athletic gifts. Those gifts are not developed at charter schools. That's not what they do. Think about that. The thinkers, no. And Dwight McKee said, well, I'm going to let him say what he has to say. As we're watching these child labor laws peeled back, you're going to see these schools get special relationships with corporations, and these kids will be put into that system. They won't be paid much, and we're coming into a really messy situation. When will we learn that slavery does not work, everybody? I don't care how you color it. Call me on the Santita Jackson Show at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Welcome to WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my Facebook family, my Morningstar family, and my YouTube family on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. And I want you to go to Santita Jackson and Friends. And those of you who are trying to friend me on Facebook, remember the Santita Jackson page. I can't accept any more friends. I can't. They limit you at 5,000. And they start kicking people off. Please go to Santita Jackson and Friends. That's what I need you to do. Go to Santita Jackson and Friends. That's the page you need to go to. Okay? Shyla, why don't you call in? You've got some interesting thoughts, and we want to hear. I mean, look, you're hearing a particular point of view, which is not grounded really. It's the dog that we have in the hunt is truth. It's not a person. This ain't personal. And Daniel, this is black and brown students. Okay. Black people are known as the canaries in the mine, if you will. We get gassed, we react first, but it's black and brown students, it's poor, and it's going to be poor white kids too. You just wait and see. So this is not excluding a Latina and Latino brothers and sisters. No, 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 honey. This is if people don't watch out. You're next. All of us. So everybody call us at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. And Shiloh, why don't you call in? Why don't you call in? You said 55 schools in Chicago say students can't read or do math at grade level. What is that about? What options do parents have? We keep pushing out great teachers. I could have been one of those students who couldn't read, but I had a first grade teacher who told my parents, because I was absent for a big chunk of my first grade year. She said, let me keep her. Miss Irene B. Smith said, let me keep her for her second grade year. The school was small enough. She was generous enough in spirit, and she saw something. She said, I don't want to pass her on. I don't want that to happen. So, Reverend and Mrs. Jackson, would you mind? Would you let me keep her? Those kinds of things happen with teachers who care. My parents are products of public schools. Most of these people who you see who've helped to reshape America and make America the greatest that it's supposed to be, they come out of the public school system. So instead of giving up on public schools, let's invest in them. That is not what we're doing. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 49 degrees, mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 36 degrees, partly cloudy. In the NBA, the Bulls will be playing the 76ers, and the Timberwolves will be facing off against the Knicks. The Wild in the NHL, 5, the Capitals 3, and Chicago will be playing the Avalanche, everybody. President Xi Jinping is visiting Moscow today to meet with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, a state summit with political overtones that will be closely watched by the rest of the world. His visit comes after a defiant Putin made a surprise appearance over the weekend in Russian-occupied Mariupol, his first visit to territory captured by Russian forces in the year-long conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg assured employees that his office will not tolerate intimidation or threats as it investigates an alleged hush money payment from former President Donald Trump to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. In an email to staff, Bragg said his office is coordinating with the New York City Police Department and other law enforcement agencies to ensure all credible threats are investigated. His email comes after former President Trump posted a social media message over the weekend saying that he expects to be arrested on Tuesday in connection with his office's investigation. City, state, and federal law enforcement agencies held security preparation meetings while a Trump lawyer predicted mayhem, his term, if an indictment comes down. As California reels from an onslaught of powerful storms and destructive floods, a 12th atmospheric river will bring another round of heavy snow and rain to the state this week. And Credit Suisse, one of the biggest banks in the world, was purchased by UBS. Such were the problems that they were having. And those are just a few of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. I want to hear from you. I want you to tell me what you think about education. Shiloh, I'd love to hear you. I really would. I mean, I think you should just call in. I mean, we don't have to agree. And if we don't agree, we're not going to be disagreeable about it. But I want you to, I'm looking for options for parents also. I want parents to be able to get their children educated. Absolutely. I'm a product of the public school system. No. So I want to know, I know that charter schools, I know that they're not the answer for our kids. As Dr. Terrain Reeves said, once they get pushed out of the charter schools, they have no place else to go. They have no place else to go. So joining Dwight McKee and Dr. Terrain Reeves is G2 Brown. I am so glad that this man has pulled together all of these educators and public school advocates from all over the country to come in and tell their stories in New Orleans and Bridgeport, Connecticut, and Philadelphia about what charter schools and privatization have done to them, what happened on Paul Vallis's watch in these various cities. G2 Brown, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Talk to us. Tell us about what you're doing with these public school advocates, parents, teachers, elected officials. They have come together, and indeed, as they came to Chicago, things got a little testy between Vallis and Johnson supporters. Talk to us. What are you trying to convey?
Yes, ma'am. I think, the late great Teddy Pendergrass said, "You can't hide from yourself. Everywhere you go, there you are." And we thought it was very important for the public, the voting public, the black community in particular, to be very clear on the impact that Paul Vallis had in education in Chicago, in Philadelphia, and in New Orleans. And his record was clear. We didn't want to come with rhetoric. We wanted to come with lived experience from community. So my responsibility was to shape his impact in Chicago. Then we brought leaders from Philadelphia. One city councilwoman said that Paul Vallis actually, his policies hurled her into community organizing. Because she had to fight for justice because what he was doing was impacting her children and her family. And of course, New Orleans, America's most African city, immediately after Hurricane Katrina. And disaster capitalism that Paul Vallis helped energize and institute in New Orleans after Katrina. And so we wanted to be very clear. Paul Vallis' role in Chicago was to set the schools of Chicago for mass closure. He did it in three distinct ways. First, he forced the retirement of thousands of veteran black educators through forcing them to be recertified. So imagine you were a math teacher for 25 years, and now all of a sudden policy comes down saying that you have to go back to school. So I knew these teachers because I worked in the schools. One man, John Dandridge, Dietrich Trump, Fuller Elementary School. I knew these people. They were amazing teachers. And they had to retire because of the policies instituted by Paul Vallis. Thousands of them. The second thing was to dilute the talent in our school by the mass expansion of selective enrollment schools / magnet schools. So that means you get the children who are the most academically sound and you put them all together, as opposed to the peer-to-peer learning that many of us experienced when public schools were working. And what did that do? That left the neighborhood schools now with lower test scores. And to give the appearance through that metric that the schools are failing. So then he instituted the third thing, which was the most damaging, which was he put over 160 of these schools on academic probation, and then had punitive intervention if their test scores did not reach a certain amount. And so most schools that went on probation this second never came off. For your Chicago listeners, I want people to think about Carver High School out in Algiers Garden. When Carver went on probation, they never came off. So eventually they were closed. And when they were closed, when Carver closed, they turned it into a selective enrollment military academy. Military academy again. Because that's the only way that black children can learn. And then children that lived in Algiers Garden could no longer go. So where they go, they went to Santita High School, 5 miles to the west. The community protested. They had to cross the gang lines, etc. As usual, machines like this did not listen. And in 2008, Dallas was gone, but this was his impact from his policy. Darian Albert was the young man that was murdered in a riot at in the high school. Because children who came from Alger Project were targeted by children who were from the area close to Cambridge. But that environment was created by those policies. And then similar things, I would say, as damaging things happen in Philadelphia and in New York, and did the same thing in Puerto Rico. Did the same thing in Haiti. So Paul Ballard was one of the first of what we would call privatization superintendents or CEO, trained at the Elon Road Institute in Washington, D.C. This produces people like the indicted and imprisoned former CEO of Chicago Public Schools, Robert Byrd Bennett, Michelle Reed in Washington, D.C., who turned Washington, D.C. into the second most charted district in the United States. I can go on, Jeffrey Canada, with the Harlem Zone in New York. He CEO, and I'm not using the word superintendent because he is CEO like Arnie Duncan was. You don't even have to ever been a teacher. You have to be adept at running a business model. And what I want to say is for your audience, the one word that I've never mentioned in any of their policies is equity. To make sure that black children, brown children, Native American children, and working class children have an equitable opportunity for inspiration in comparison with their white counterparts. If you go to a school in Chicago, near DePaul University, an upper middle class white community, those children have, right now, they're in school, they're heading to school right now, those children have a completely different academic reality than the children who live on the west side or who live on the south side near Dr. King's workshop, Memphis Elementary, right across the street from Dr. King's workshop. What I mean by completely different academic opportunity: smaller class size, counseling, art, music, world language, opportunities for inspiration, school newspaper. Because when Paul Dallas became the CEO, when he put schools on probation, what they did, and sisters and brothers, this is not my opinion. I lived it. I was there. I was in schools working side by side with teachers because for 20 years I coordinated the Emoji Leadership Institute, bringing culturally relevant education into school. And I saw the curriculum narrow. So now instead of having civics or economics, now you have double period reading block, double period math block, which is simply code word for test drill, test drill, test drill. And what happened in many of those schools, the light goes out in our children's eyes because they're no longer inspired. W.E.B. Du Bois understood in 1940 that standardized testing is not an indication of intelligence, but it is born out of eugenics to prove the myth of white supremacy. If he understood that in 1940, then how in God's name are we using that to determine whether schools are successful today? So we wanted to bring people together in that so that the truth can be told. You know, what you really have, sisters, what you really have. You know, when we think of colonialism, we think of, France and Senegal. We think of Great Britain and Ghana, or we think of the Congo and places like that. But when people control the institutions in your community, and they run those institutions based on their opinions of your community, then you don't have the power, or you give them the power to shape how those institutions function, which basically means how your people develop. You are colonialism. So when you hear that Paul Dallas is a colonizer, that is not rhetoric. Those are the interests that men like him represent. And the end result is every city where the charter school industry has taken root, hear me now, every city, without fail, black population has plummeted.
We're talking.
I would get involved in what's wrong. Model is not. Hello?
I'm sorry, Dwight McKee?
Yeah, I was saying this model is not new. This is not new. We saw the same thing happen with Negro baseball. Back in the 30s and the 40s, Negro baseball was the biggest industry in Black America. The biggest industry in Black America. It was controlled and owned by us. And what the Major Leagues did was begin to cipher off the best players on the Negro team.
Wait. Put a pin in that. Put a pin in that. And the black professional class signed on to it because black baseball was given the option of becoming a rival league with Major League Baseball. But no, the black professional class wanted to be in Major League Baseball, and they left their business behind. Dwight, is that not what happened?
That's exactly what happened. And so Ernie Banks went to the Cubs, and Willie Mays went to the Giants, and Hank Aaron went to the Braves, and Jackie Robinson went to the Dodgers, and the best team of the crop went to the Major League, and the value of those teams increased dramatically because more people, including the black who had supported black baseball, started going to see the Yankees play and see the Dodgers play. And Major League, the Negro Leagues, which employed hundreds and thousands of people back then, began to lose value, and the stadiums closed, and the vendors were put out of business. And so the cream of the crop went to the white teams. Their value increases at the expense of the biggest business in Black America. And it's the same formula they're using now for our schools. They pick out the cream of the crop. They elevate the value of the charter schools because it looks as if they have some superior curriculum. They leave the basic students to, with no support system. And so their grades suffer. And the result is that then you can justify firing those teachers, closing those schools, and gentrifying that community because now those people there move out, the value of properties are reduced. And now it becomes prime real estate to be gentrified. It's the same plan that they've always used when they want to redistribute the wealth and the goods and services at our children's expense.
Stand by. And everybody stand by. I want to hear from you. 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. We're talking about it. And Shiloh, why don't you call in? Well, I'll speak to some of your concerns when we get on the other side of the break on the Santita Jackson Show. G2 Brown, Dwight McKee, and Dr. Terrain Reeves talk about privatization of education, charter schools. What does that mean? Back in just a moment. Okay, you all can keep talking. Remember, we're on Facebook Live.
Brother Brown, I'm really glad you did. You done a marvelous work. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. I would, I think that you gave your example about the Negro, which is the history that I studied it, but I didn't make the comparison, so I appreciate that. And I would also say that at the root of it is that as a black community, we have lost our sense of self-determination, our sense of really controlling a level of the institutions that impact our day-to-day lives. If you walk in the black community, I live on the west side of Chicago, vibrant part of the city, 85% of the businesses are owned by somebody who doesn't look like you, right? And they run those businesses based on their opinion. You know, we have liquor store instead of grocery store, you know, and I think we have been so programmed against ourselves that, you know, we overcomplicate something that is actually very simple. You know, that nobody's going to love us better than us. So at the end of the day, school, healthcare institutions, food production and delivery system. If we look across the country, the common denominator in the black community is we don't control it. Now, and then we allow someone else to control the narrative. And it's not that we are dealing with powerful interests, it's that we've given our power away. And that is the focus. It's not only the focus. It's not only the focus. The ability to organize, mobilize, the ability to create the alternative. And the alternative does not mean travesty. The alternative means having community control of the schools that we pay taxes that exist. And shaping them based off the needs of our community. So I appreciate you, bro.
Excuse me, Dr. Reeves, are you still there?
I am.
Okay, fantastic. She's an incredible educator, Mr. Brown, and she teaches in the New York City public schools, and she's also at CUNY. So she gets our kids through high school and into and through college. Very unusual. And she's also she's someone who should be involved in the work that you're doing. She does so much, and she's with the, you know, and is a leader in the unions here. So I'm looking forward to connecting with you. Stand by. I got to go to at least one caller. And so you all call us at 773-763-9278. And I need to address a concern of one of my listeners. So there we go.
All right, 10 seconds.
Okay.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please like and share, and subscribe. And everybody, I need you to go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page. I can't accept any friends on the Santita Jackson page. It's just a landing page, which enables me to have a Santita Jackson and Friends page. So everybody, please head on over there and become my friend, and meet me on Twitter at Santita J. Shyla, I would love for you to call in, but let me just address you and some other people who might have the same concerns. You asked me if I was putting my thumb on the scale for Brandon Johnson. You also wanted to know why there was no criticism of Brandon Johnson. I get it. But the fact is, I would love to have Mr. Vallis on to answer this. In fact, he's been on my show more as a candidate than Brandon Johnson has been. And I have asked questions of him. I wasn't aware of the record in New Orleans. And now that I'm aware of it, if he will come back on the show, I will ask him about that. Thumb on the scales. This is not NPR. I am not a journalist. I've never professed to be, although I am a writer. This is the Santita Jackson Show. So I am a woman of opinions, and that's what you hear. But what I've always promised that I would do with you is tell you the truth, is present facts to you. Because I'm also a woman of science. I was recruited to school for math and that. And so, and I'm a musician. So, if chord, if you hear disharmony, that means something is off in the chord. I can live with that. I just change the chord so I can have some harmony. You get it? So what I'm saying to you is, I just enter the factors into the equation, and whatever comes out on the equal side, it is what it is. What comes out of this equation on the equal side is that education is unequal. When my brother Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. was in Congress, he studied as a lawyer, he studied the Constitution and he found a lot of holes in it. And there are a lot of rights that we presume that we have that we do not have. And one of the rights that we do not have as Americans is the federally protected right to an education. Our children in Detroit, Michigan are suing the Detroit public school system for not teaching them to read. Yeah. Many of them are being graduated at the tops of their classes, and they are going to college and they find out that they are functionally illiterate. You don't have a right to learn in America. You have a right to be a slave. If you're arrested, that's what you go back into. That's what we're fighting today. So this Black professional class and these professional classes who support this madness that hurts our children, brown, Black, and poor white people, I'm against it. So if you want someone who pretends not to have opinions, go to CNN or NBC or Fox. That is not who I am. I have opinions. But what I'm going to do, I do not let my emotions rule me. I rule them. And I let the facts drive me. I don't let them drive me crazy. So call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. How you doing, Hunter? What's on your mind today?
Good morning, Santita, and good morning to the guests, particularly G2 Brown. He's someone who put his life on the line for a diet school. And good morning also to Dwight McKee, one of the most brilliant social scientists that I know. I just want to make a couple of quick points for people of conscience out here, not just simply, how we've been divided. The question is, does Naperville have a privatized school system? I bring that up because we have to connect the dots, Santita and your guests. Naperville ranks number one per capita as the most safest city in the United States. Naperville, a short distance away from our beloved city. Chicago also ranks too. This you can look this up. Folks can look this up as number 239. So there's a bunch of other smaller cities that are less safe than Chicago is, and so we have a misrepresentation of the total picture here. It's like going to a magic show. We know we're seeing an illusion, a trick, but we don't know how. So it's a misdirection of attention. So we have to connect the dots. And so I commend my Congressman Jackson for having the hearing at Kennedy King College last Friday on I like to say, the death gap between Inglewood and Streeterville, because that's connected to education. Chicago, one of the good things that Rahm Emanuel did was he instituted the Healthy Chicago 2.0, because at least he, or hoping to get reelected, wanted to connect the dots between health and education, health and public safety. But we have not heard one conversation from the media, the mainstream media, on connecting the dots between a healthy Chicago and public safety. That's very important. And so the last thing I just want to add to this is that one of the reasons why children aren't learning is what they're listening to, the music that they're listening to, the music videos that they're listening to. Chuck D made a point of this in his recent documentary on hip-hop, on public broadcasting, that there's, quote, corporate decisions to play vulgar and violent music on radio stations that our children listen to. In 2006, I believe, there was an FCC hearing here at Rainbow Push, and a bunch of community people came to testify, but the media stacked the deck and didn't allow the community people to testify until 4 hours later about the music and how it's affecting our children's health.
And so put a bow on this for us, Hunter. Hunter,
thank you very much.
No. Put a bow on this. Your central point is what?
My central point is privatizing schools does not guarantee that children will be educated.
Okay.
That's the whole point that I'm making here. And there's lots of things that connect. There's no privatized schools that have health plans.
Well, the fact is, what they're doing is they're not educating our children; they're training them, and I think that's an ultimate point. And we need to talk about that's what we're talking about, which is why Reverend Jackson fought vulgar lyrics in music almost half a century ago, because we saw where this was going. Because he worked with Berry Gordy and Clarence Avant and with Mr. Respect Yourself, Al Bell, who owned Stax Records. He worked with these people, and these folks, and Curtis Mayfield and Jerry Butler, they had thriving record companies. I remember Jerry Butler's Writers Workshop. Dwight, you remember that well. Marvin Yancey and my uncle Charles Jackson came out of that, and they went on to write all of these iconic hits for Aretha Franklin, but she didn't want them, so then Natalie Cole took them, and the rest is history. This is what we were producing then, and this has been one of the complaints that a lot of very talented people have. But with all the things that have been said, and thank you, Hunter, because you've given us a whole lot. Dr. Reeves, I want you to respond to what you've heard from Mr. Brown, what you've heard from Mr. McKee, and from Hunter as a teacher. Where do you see this all going?
So it's interesting.
Okay, we lost you, Dr. Reeves. Dr. Reeves?
I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries.
I'm here. Sorry.
That's okay. It's all right.
Caller who just spoke about, educating our students. I think one of the things we have to understand is that a school is successful when they receive funding. We have innovative educators who create programs that are geared towards taking our children from 0 to 100, bringing them into college, helping to ensure that they're not only prepared for college, but they're prepared for career and for life. If the schools, public schools, are not getting the funding that they need and deserve, then there is not much that a lot of these educators can do in the public schools. I want you guys to think about the fact that a lot of these educators take money out of their own pocket to pay for certain things, certain supplies for their students. The schools are supposed to get the funding that they need. However, when you have people who come in and say charter schools are better, and charter schools will do, and charter schools will take the burden from the city, the state, the federal, what then happens is those charter schools get the funding that the public schools should have gotten to do the same work. The same work. Computers are provided to the charter schools. Why weren't they provided to the public schools? The innovative programs that you see in charter schools, those were born in public schools. Those are not new, innovative programs that were born out of the ideas of people like Dallas and other so-called charter school creators. Those were ideas born out of innovative educators over the years that were tried and true, and because of lack of funding, had to be ended. So I want everyone to think about that. The caller just talked about music. I'm going to tell you, if you have the right educator, the right music teacher in my classroom, there is so much that a kid can learn from music and relate that music to math, relate that music to English, relate that music to social studies. However, if you're not putting the right people in place, if you're not paying for the right people to be in place. If you're not funding the education system, then what ultimately happens is you have schools that end up failing. They put on schools in need lists, then they're put on schools under review lists, then they're closed down. Because the goal is to close those schools down, force people into charter schools, and then have the students in those charter schools, if they do make it to the charter schools with the vouchers that they're given, because those vouchers don't guarantee you a place, what ends up happening with those kids if they go there and they're frustrated because they don't have the variety that they had in a traditional public school? They end up dropping out. And we've seen that over the years. We've seen that. I'm not here to say whether Paul Vallis is a great person or a good person or a bad person. I'm looking at his educational track record as an educator. That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the fact that he has been bought by the corporate sector, and what he continues to do is to create this pipeline where our kids are dropping out of school, potentially ending up in prison, but there is no future for them if they're not educated. When you can graduate a kid from a public school and they go on to college, or they play in sports, or they have a career in business, whatever it is, you're not guaranteed that in a charter school, especially when you have zero tolerance policy that will kick a kid out if they even as much as turn around and say to some other kid, I don't like you. Okay? These kids are not allowed the autonomy to be who they are. They're not allowed the opportunity to grow and be free. They've already been shut down in a charter school system that potentially forces them into the school decision pipeline where they're shut down again, or they're forced out on the street to go and find jobs, right? It's like the Gary plan all over again. We don't want to see any of our children be forced out of public schools to go and work. We really want to see our children actually be a part of the communities that we create. We want to see our children graduate from high school, and we want to see them go to college, or we want to see them go into a career in tech ed. But what does a charter school offer? You don't have vocational studies in charter schools. So when you have a young man or a young woman who comes in and says, I don't like academics, I like building. Tell me which charter schools you guys know of that actually guarantee that that kid can learn how to build something. There is none. There's absolutely not one charter school that does that. But a traditional public school that offers the variety understands that the kid who comes in might not be academically inclined, more vocationally inclined, can get that support, can get that education. When we're looking at unions, and I've been reading newspaper articles where they're talking about the fact that Brandon Johnson, he's a CTE organizer. I am union. And I know for a fact with the work that even Reverend Jackson has done over the years, guaranteeing and ensuring that you have people in unions who can keep their jobs, who can get their benefits, who can do a tremendous amount of things, not just in the public school system, but in the private sector. The fact that everyone would say, I can't trust a union organizer, I want you to think about this. Why can't you trust that union organizer? You'd rather go to the corporate entities and trust them when all they've been doing is taking from your communities over the years? That's not a guarantee. The union ensures that its educators, its workers are fully licensed. The union ensures that their members are fully trained. The union ensures that anything that their members are not able to get from the city, they ensure that they get it to ensure that they do their jobs effectively. So when I hear people saying, I can't trust, why can't you trust? You can trust a businessman to train your child in a classroom. You can't trust an educator to do that work. You can't trust an educator to lead a city.
Well,
that should not be any conversation on anyone's tongue, because if I can teach your kid in the classroom, I can lead your city. There should be no question about that.
Absolutely, there's no question. I only have like 5 or 6 minutes left in this segment, and I want to hear we're going to get you back, Dr. Reeves, but I want to hear from you, G2 Brown, about what is next. Because, I've had to speak to some people who feel that I put my thumb on the scales, and I'm like, look, all I'm doing is presenting facts to you. And they line up where they line up. And I'm going to reach out to Mr. Vallis and ask him to speak to his record, because that's the record, everybody. You can criticize me, but look at the record. Look at the record. And the thing is, it has been shown over and over and over again, Mr. Brown, Mr. McKee, and Dr. Reeves. When you resource a public school, the kids succeed. I grew up with Dunbar High School. I grew up with CVS and Lindblom. I'm part of the first full 4-year graduating class of Whitney Young, and I saw all the resources they poured into there. But you still had Kenwood. You still had South Shore, because there was a time, G2 Brown and Dwight McKee, when everybody was trying to get into Kenwood and South Shore and Lindblom.
Yes, ma'am.
Because you knew that if you came out of there top notch, you could go to any school you wanted to and compete and do extremely well. Something is, and you could go into the trades.
I'm a Bronco.
So talk to me. I've got about 3 minutes for you, G2 Brown. What's next? What do we do?
Yes, ma'am. So, can you hear me?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Well, first, you're talking to a Kenwood Academy alum. I agree with you 100% on that.
Of course you do. You and Lena McLean. I'm not mad at you. God. I'm not mad. But I did want to go to Kenwood too. I wanted to go there. So there's that. I love it.
Yes, ma'am. I'm Kenwood Academy class of
Oh, right. Gotcha.
But I would just say that, as my sister just said, you have to look at someone's record. Now, I will share with you why I'm supporting Brandon Johnson is because, people have to remember that in 2015, because our memories are short, in 2015, remember there was a historic Chicago union strike in 2012. Now, that's when the late great Karen Lewis was the president of Chicago Teachers. So, in 2015, she called me and a few other organizers in her office. She said, the only people that know this is the executive council. She said, but I'm running from there in Chicago. And if people remember that moment, and she was going around the city, the energy was so high because someone from the education justice movement is actually going to be mayor of the city of Chicago. Mm-hmm. She would have beat Rahm Emanuel right head up, and then she got ill. And she's an ancestor now. Brandon's candidacy is the realization of that moment where someone who was protesting and blocked the elevator to City Hall, protesting inequity, someone who joined me on this diet hunger strike, where we got the only in American history, the only closed school reopened as a neighborhood school, where the community exercised its power, took its power back, and now diet is thriving as a neighborhood school that's well-resourced with $16 million in new investment. Brandon Johnson was part of that struggle. Brandon, I know his value. And, as my sister said, if, someone who decides to teach, that means you decide to give your life to children. And so you're going to trust a privatizer, someone who is closed, and there's no evidence that there is evidence that school closing harms Black children. There's ample evidence. So he has done harm in our community. So don't tell me about a contract. Because at some point, Black Chicago, our children cannot be on the negotiating table. At some point, we have to have a backbone. And we have to reject privatization. Because everything my sister said about school funding, here's one thing that we have to remember. And this is Stanford University. University of Colorado, and several other outlets. Learning Policy Institute, only 1 out of 5 charter schools outperform traditional public schools. I'll say that one more time.
Thank you.
Only 1 out of 5 charters outperform traditional public schools. This means, despite the fact they can pick the children they want and kick out the ones they don't, they still batting 20%. So if you were a quarterback and you only completed 1 out of 5 of your passes, if you were a baseball player, you only got it 1 hit every 5 times you came up to bat. Or if you were a point guard or a shooting guard, you only get 1 out of 5 shots. Would you stay in the game? So why, in God's name, is that acceptable for black children? And the last thing I'll say, Ms. Jackson, when your listeners hear the word school choice, you have to know what they're hearing. The school choice movement was born as a reaction of white parents after the passage of Brown versus Board. So in places like Davis County, Maryland, and Prince George's County, and other places around the country, a U.S. senator instituted massive resistance to Brown versus Board. Parents began to call for school choice, and they began to pull their children out of the public school system in order to stop them from going to school with us. Because what America has never done, the fight has never changed, has honored the mandate of Brown versus Board. Our fight is for equity. It's not for the illusion of school choice. And I appreciate you having us on today, sister.
Oh, no question about that. And I'm glad that you were able to make the time for us because I know that you're very, very busy. Dwight, 60 seconds, they're yours.
I went to Dixon Elementary School on 83rd and St. Lawrence. My 7th grade teacher, Miss Stratton, Bella Stratton, she and her husband at Carter G. Woodson created Negro History Week at the Wabash YMCA. She taught me more going half a day with Willis wagons than I learned in 4 years at Central High School in the white community and the years I spent at Trinity College. That one teacher changed my life. I just want everybody to know that the black farmers are endorsing Brandon today at the 53rd and Bench. Those who are interested are all invited to the 11:30 today. I think it's important that this statement. I'm not apologizing for what's important against violence because I think that the future of our children are at stake.
Amen.
And so I'm not trying to be bad. I'm trying to be thoughtful and conscientious and strategic.
And you know what?
Because I know what that is.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm always and I hear you and you have the right to that. I'm always going to seek to be fair. That having been said, that's why I've taken the position that I've taken. I will present the information to you and you do what you will with it. That's all you need to do. Just get the information. That's what's fair. The right information. I love you, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. G2 Brown, Dwight McKee, Dr. Terrain Reeves. Love you, love you, love you. God bless you. Thank you, Devin, for a great show. WCPT at 820 and AM 950 radio. God bless you, everybody. Bye-bye.